At my daughter's 5th birthday party, not only did my wife fail to invite me her father, she even let Makoto Ito sit in my place. I angrily scolded Makoto for being shameless. But to my shock, neither my wife nor my daughter stood by me. Instead, they demanded that I apologize to him. My daughter said, "Daddy's bad. Bad daddy, I want Uncle Ito to be my new daddy." My wife chimed in, "Why are you being so petty? Makoto came with good intentions to celebrate our child's birthday. What's wrong with that? Having more people who love her is a blessing. Why make a fuss over something so trivial?" Watching the three of them all smiles and warmth like a picture-perfect family, I suddenly felt exhausted. This marriage had become nothing but a farce. I contacted my mentor overseas, erased every trace of my presence from that home, and prepared the divorce papers. While my wife and daughter were still waiting for me to crawl back and apologize, I had already left for another country to begin a brand new life. Chapter 1 Junior, I've arranged everything with the hospital. If you agree, your mother can begin treatment abroad within a month, Willow said. Thank you, Senior, I replied. I'll take care of everything here and accompany my mother there. There was a pause. Then Willow asked, surprised you're coming with her, is that a problem? I asked, a little anxious. Of course not, I'd be thrilled if you came. Our mentor misses you dearly, and all your juniors can't wait to finally meet the legendary big brother of the academy. But do your wife and daughter know you're leaving? I'll tell them, I replied simply. I hung up the phone and placed the signed divorce papers on the rosewood desk in the study. The books on the shelf were covered in a thin layer of dust. When I pulled out one, I found a photo frame hidden behind it. In the picture was a happy little family of 3. Maria, just 1-year-old, was nestled quietly in my arms. Sophia looked up at us with a gentle smile, and I was beaming the very image of joy. My chest tightened. Back then, we had truly been a happy family. Sophia and I married through a family arrangement, but even so, our early days together were sweet. We were the picture of harmony, the model couple everyone admired. A year later, Sophia got pregnant. Her morning sickness was intense. One night, she felt ill and had a bitter taste in her mouth. Tearfully, she looked at me and said she craved sugarcane. I didn't say a word. I just put on a coat and left the bedroom. The next day, she got her sugarcane, but I had come down with a high fever. That night had been freezing, but I went out myself to find sugarcane for her. By the time I returned chilled to the bone, Sophia had already fallen asleep waiting. Seeing me with a burning fever, she scolded, "You're the CEO of a company. Why catch a cold over this? You could have just sent an assistant. And I could have gone without sugarcane. Why are you always so good to me?" she cried while holding me, feeling guilty. I laughed, both heartbroken and amused. But those soft moments of love and warmth had long since been replaced by constant accusations and yelling. Her sweet endearments had become bitter cries of, "George, will you ever stop?" The memories swirled through my mind, finally freezing on the scene from 3 nights ago. It had rained heavily that day. By the time I arrived at the Kim family estate, the banquet was already underway. It was a family celebration for Maria's 5th birthday. Everyone had gathered, everyone except the biological father of the child. Inside, the room was full of laughter and warmth. But as I stepped in, the joy vanished like smoke. Every face turned cold, their expressions annoyed at my intrusion. Maria pouted. Her big eyes glared at me with pure resentment, as if I were some enemy, not her father. Makoto, Sophia's first love, was seated beside Maria with Sophia on the other side. They looked just like a happy little family. And I was the outsider, ruining their perfect picture. Couldn't hold back anymore. "Makoto, have you no shame?" I shouted. "You already stole Wong Corp's investment project. Now you're trying to steal another man's wife and child too." Makoto shrank back a bit. Sophia slammed the table and shouted, "George, watch your mouth. Makoto had nothing to do with Wong Corp's downfall. If you're going to keep making a scene like this, then don't bother coming back." I snapped, "I'm telling the truth. Why do you trust a stranger more than your own husband?" She shot back, "That's nonsense. The Ito and Kim families go way back. How is Makoto a stranger? He's here out of kindness to celebrate Maria's birthday." "You're the one making trouble." I narrowed my eyes. "I'm the one making trouble." I laughed bitterly, then charged forward, ready to rip that fake smile off Makoto's face, only for Sophia to step in and block me. Maria burst into tears. "Wah, Daddy's bad daddy. Don't bully Uncle Ito. I hate you, Daddy." I don't remember how the scene ended. But I do remember this: when both my wife and daughter stood by Makoto's side, that was the moment I decided. I didn't want either of them anymore. Chapter 2. I put the photo frame back in its place and restored everything in the study to how it was before, then turned and left. On my way downstairs, I ran into Sophia, her face frosty and expression unreadable. I tried to ignore her and walk past, but she stepped in front of me and said, "George, you need to apologize to Makoto for what you said 3 days ago." I looked at her in disbelief. "Apologize? What exactly did I say that was wrong?" Sophia's brow furrowed tightly. "I'm not here to argue. Even if Makoto forgot to inform you about the birthday party, you didn't have to be so petty. You showed up anyway, didn't you? He planned the whole thing with good intentions, and you ruined it. Don't you think that was going too far?" I sneered coldly. "Did I beg him to throw the party?" She bit her lip. "That's enough. Can you stop with the sarcasm already?" Her voice rose as she added, "Maria was really upset that day. For her sake, if nothing else, you owe Makoto an apology." I was so angry I couldn't speak for a moment. Seeing I stayed silent, Sophia softened her tone. "Just apologize and we'll let it go." I replied flatly, I didn't want to hear another word about Makoto. Thinking I'd agreed, Sophia turned to leave. I called after her, "Are you coming home tonight?" If she came back, she'd see the divorce papers and we could end this marriage as soon as possible. Without looking back, she said, "No need to wait. I'm taking Maria out for dinner." I watched her retreating figure without trying to stop her, not like I used to. Even though I had made up my mind to let go, my heart still ached. I looked away, forcing down the wave of emotions rising inside me. Then I headed for the hospital. Through the glass, I watched my mother lying in bed, still unconscious. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My throat tightened with a pain that went bone deep. The attending doctor stood beside me and said gently, "Ms. Liu has already informed us. Madam Wang will be transferred for treatment soon. Her condition is stable for now, so there's no need to worry too much." However, the doctor hesitated before continuing, "If you intend to keep her here a little longer, you'll need to cover the upcoming costs." My mother had collapsed 3 years ago after suffering the double blow of Wang Corp's collapse and my wife's affair. Her condition triggered complications, and she was later diagnosed with a rare disease. Every minute of treatment costs a fortune. I had already sold off nearly all my assets just to barely sustain her current care. I asked, "How much more do you need?" The doctor answered, 10 million yuan. I nodded slightly. I still had 8 million on hand. If I could help Willow close the deal in a few days, I could cover the rest. In fact, Willow had initially offered to cover all of my mother's expenses herself, but I didn't want to burden her. So this was the compromise. She found another way to help me. Even an ordinary friend could go to such lengths. Yet Sophia hadn't even shown her face once. I let out a bitter laugh. I should have known long ago. Sophia had stopped loving me years ago. Chapter 3. 2 days later, a biotechnology seminar was held at the convention center. Wearing a sharp tailored suit, I navigated the crowd of researchers with ease. I used to be a top student and had attended events like this many times under my mentor's guidance, meeting many people including top-tier experts in the field. So when others saw me chatting casually with a well-known academic heavyweight, they began to gather around. In no time, I had become the center of attention. Makoto, surprised by my presence, tugged Sophia's sleeve and said, "Sophia, look, isn't that Georgia? What's he doing here? Do you think he found out the Ito group is planning to enter the biotech field and he's here to sabotage us?" Sophia's expression turned grim. Wang Corp never dealt with biotech, and she had never heard of George having any interest in this field. But the Ito group's plans were confidential. How did George find out? While she was lost in thought, the crowd had already dispersed. I was nowhere to be seen. Makoto nudged Sophia again. "Sophia, Chairman Chan is over there. Let's go talk to him about the partnership." She nodded and walked with him. I had seen them earlier too. Watching them arm in arm, looking so close, still brought a pang to my chest. To make matters worse, my business talks hadn't gone smoothly. Frustrated, I excused myself and stepped outside to get some air. At the entrance, a familiar face greeted me warmly. "Are you George?" "Professor Lee," I said in surprise. Professor Lee was a close friend of my mentor and had always been kind to me. "I never expected to run into you here." He nodded, smiling. "It's been years. I heard from old Jean that you got married. How have you been lately?" I frowned slightly. "Everything's fine," I replied. He could sense my hesitation. He comforted me. "Life is never smooth sailing, but as long as you follow your heart, any challenge is just a step forward. George, don't lose yourself. You weren't like this before." I chuckled, the gloom lifting as I recalled my university days. "Thank you," I said. By the way, we have a new project. I wonder if you might be interested. I began to explain the project in detail. Professor Lee's expression shifted from warm to serious. Halfway through, I suddenly paused, my smile freezing as I saw who had arrived. "Mr. Lee, I'm Sophia, and this is Makoto," said a familiar voice. They seemed equally startled to see me. Mr. Lee nodded politely. "Mr. Ito, Ms. Kim." They exchanged brief greetings. Then Makoto said suddenly, "Mr. Lee, the rest of what we're about to share involves company confidentiality. Would you mind asking this gentleman to step away?" Mr. Lee looked at me. My expression was calm. He nodded slightly. "Of course. Please." Chapter 4. By the time the seminar ended, the sky had darkened and it had started to rain. I had come by taxi and now looked up at the gloomy sky, frustrated by my lack of preparation. Makoto and Sophia walked over hand in hand. Makoto, sounding smug, said, "George, you're still here, can't get a cab? Why don't you ride with us?" His tone was laced with arrogance, practically daring me to react. In the past, I might have lost my temper on the spot, but now I was past caring. His provocations no longer held any power over me. I replied calmly, "All right." Perhaps I was too composed. Makoto's eyes flashed with surprise, clearly displeased that I hadn't taken the bait. He thought, shouldn't George be yelling at me by now, but still trying to maintain his nice guy image. Makoto smiled politely. The black Maybach was parked nearby. Makoto and Sophia shared an umbrella. Afraid she might get wet, Makoto even wrapped his arm around her waist protectively. I hadn't brought an umbrella. The rain had started too suddenly and the organizers hadn't prepared enough. Helpless, I used my coat to shield myself as best I could. By the time we reached the car, I was half soaked. The car pulled up at the villa. I stepped out and went inside first, only to realize they had followed me in. Noticing my glance, Sophia said, "Makoto and I have something to discuss. Go on up to your room." Seeing my drenched clothes, she added change into something dry. "You'll catch a cold." I said nothing and went upstairs. Moments later, I heard the door of the study opening and closing. My phone buzzed. Professor Lee's student had messaged me to discuss a potential collaboration. I didn't even have time to wash up. I changed into pajamas and started replying. I got so absorbed in the work that I lost track of time. Only after sending the final contract to Willow did I set my phone down. By then, the cold had seeped into my bones. I sneezed, feeling light-headed and nauseous, but I didn't pay it much attention. After washing up, I went downstairs. Makoto had probably left. Sophia was sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. I asked casually, "You're not going out today?" She replied, "The auction is the day after tomorrow. You're coming with me." She added this time, "Don't say no one told you." I said, "I'm not going." She frowned. "Why not? Are you still mad?" Then she pulled out her phone and showed me some pictures. "Look, this 12-scroll landscape painting, isn't it beautiful? And this carved teapot." Everything she showed me were things I used to love. I knew she was just making small talk. My preferences meant nothing to someone who didn't love me anymore. Chapter 5. The auction was held in a mountainside villa styled with traditional elegance both inside and out. I sat in a corner watching Sophia, Makoto, and Maria sitting together like they were the real family. I had no interest in the auction itself. So I sat there listless, letting the hum of conversation wash over me. Maria said, "Mommy, this auction is so boring. I don't want to stay here anymore." Makoto chuckled, "Be good, Maria. If your good uncle will ask Mommy to give you a reward." "All right." Maria shook her head. No, I want to go play right now." Sophia replied indulgently, "Why don't you let Daddy take you outside to play?" Maria pouted and grumbled, "Then I'd rather stay. Daddy never lets me do anything fun. I don't want to be with him." Maria, Sophia snapped under her breath. Maria turned away in defiance. Makoto patted her head, gently leaned down, and whispered something in her ear. I couldn't hear what he said, but Maria's eyes lit up with excitement. She jumped off her seat, ran straight to me, grabbed my hand, and said, "Daddy, come play with me. Please, let's go outside." Sophia's tone was unusually soft. "George, take Maria out for a bit. You probably don't care much for today's auction pieces anyway." I replied, "The painting and carved teapot you showed me yesterday were quite nice." She stiffened slightly, clearly not expecting that response. "So that's it, huh?" Hand the kid off to me while she spends quality time with her lover. "What am I, a babysitter?" Still keeping up appearances, Sophia maintained her elegant facade and said, "I'll keep an eye out for you." Maria tugged at me, impatiently pulling me toward the exit. "Let's go to the pavilion," she said, already darting ahead. Worried she might fall, I called after her, "Slow down, watch your step." At the pavilion, Maria immediately let go of my hand and climbed up and down the stone bench by herself, ignoring every warning I'd given her. The night deepened and the mountain mist thickened. A chill crept into the air and I said, "Maria, let's head back. You've played enough for now, haven't you?" Maria pouted. "You're so annoying. You're nothing like Uncle Ito. When are you finally going to divorce Mommy? I want Uncle Ito to be my daddy." Her words struck me like a punch to the gut. Ice ran through my veins. I asked, "Who told you to say that? Was it Makoto, some relative?" Maria crossed her arms. "No one told me. It's true, Uncle Ito is 100 times better than you. I love Uncle Ito." I stared at her stunned. All I could see was the little girl she used to be, the one who toddled over when I was feeling down, hugging me and mumbling, "Daddy, don't be sad, be happy. Maria loves Daddy." Now my mind went blank, my body frozen in place. When I finally came back to myself, I gave a bitter smile and said, "Finished, good. Let's go back." Chapter 6. The atmosphere at the auction was electric. The host shouted congratulations to Ms. Kim for winning the Rolex gold watch. Amid admiring glances, Sophia picked up the watch from the tray and placed it gently on Makoto's wrist. Whispers buzzed around us, "Wow, lucky guy, is that Ms. Kim's husband? She's so generous with him." Someone chimed in, "Right, that watch cost 80 million yuan and the painting, the 12-scroll landscape, was a full 100 million. Ms. Kim really loves her husband." Maria suddenly let go of my hand and ran toward them. The three of them laughed together, the very image of a happy family. The next item on display was the carved celadon teapot from Ukiln. As expected, Sophia bought it without hesitation. The crowd buzzed with excitement again. The noise gave me a headache, so I stepped out to the pavilion for some fresh air. I leaned against the railing, staring out at the misty mountains when Willow called. She said the negotiations weren't going smoothly, the other side kept testing the waters. She suspected there were other competitors. I recalled Makoto and Sophia's appearance that day and replied it might be the Ito group or Kim group. Willow said, "Kim group, if it's them, we might be able to collaborate. That would make things easier." I cut her off. "That's not an option." My tone was sharp, too sharp. There was a pause on the line. Then she said, "You're right. Working alone means more leverage for us anyway." A voice spoke behind me, laced with mockery. "George, what are you doing sneaking around here, feeling jealous seeing how well Sophia treats me?" I turned off my phone screen and faced him. "What do you want?" Makoto stepped closer, fingers brushing over his golden watch, a smug smile on his face. "Isn't it obvious?" A pang struck my chest, but I kept my expression cold. "Should I wish you eternal happiness?" I stepped forward. He flinched. "What are you doing? If you touch me, Sophia won't let you off." I replied, "Relax, you're just in my way." I tried to walk past him, but suddenly he grabbed my arm. "You're not going anywhere." His grip caught me off guard and I staggered back. "What the hell? Let go." Makoto's voice suddenly rose in panic. "George the First didn't mean to, it's just that I love her so much. If you're upset, I'll leave Sophia, okay?" I tried to shake him off, but we ended up struggling. In a flash, we both lost balance and fell to the ground. Then came voices, "What are you two doing, Ito uncle?" Everything blurred. My head slammed hard into a stone pillar in the garden. Pain exploded like lightning across my skull, tearing through my body. I curled up, instinctively trying to lessen the agony. My vision went completely black. All I could hear was a flurry of shouting. Someone asked, "George, why are you here?" I groaned, "Sophia, it hurts." Another voice said, "Ms. Kim and her husband already left." "Wait, someone's still here. What do we do? Get him to a hospital quick." Chapter 7. When I woke up, my head felt like it was splitting open. Each heartbeat brought a sharp stabbing pain. I struggled to sit up and reach for my phone, but what I saw stopped me cold. Sophia was there, sitting silently in a chair by the bed. When she saw I was awake, her face darkened like a storm. "George, who is Willow?" she demanded. I didn't want to answer, but when I saw the cracked phone in her hand, my pupils contracted. I instinctively reached out to grab it. Sophia moved quickly, pressing my arm down. Her brows drew tight. "Tell me, who is she, your secret lover?" My headache worsened. I had no strength to resist. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're hurting me. Let go." She didn't budge. "Oh, how impressive. I ignore you for a few days and you're already rushing into someone else's arms. George, are you that desperate?" I laughed, furious. "Desperate, please. Who's the one clinging to a married man? If I have a lover, then what's Makoto to you? Her face twisted with anger. How dare you slander Makoto like that? She raised her hand to slap me, but the sight of me pale, sweating brow furrowed in pain made her freeze. Her hand hung mid-air and never came down. You should be grateful nothing happened to Makoto, she hissed. Otherwise this wouldn't be ending so easily. And let me give you some advice, I don't care who Willow is, but cut her off now. I said nothing, my brows knitted tight. Why could she and Makoto flaunt their intimacy openly, but I couldn't even message a friend? She brought Makoto into our home, what right did she have to interrogate me? How shameless could a person be? As I watched her walk away without a second glance, whatever last shred of hope I had left for her vanished completely. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Not a single person came to visit me. The day I was discharged, the sky was dark and heavy with rain. It felt like a weight was pressing on my chest, suffocating me. I exhaled deeply, about to hail a cab when my phone rang. It was Willow. George, something big just happened. Chapter 8. Willow told me that the Ito Group suddenly secured the partnership with an offer far beyond what we had budgeted. The words hit me like a bucket of ice water poured over my head in the dead of winter. The tactics were all too familiar, exactly the same as when Wong Corp was sabotaged years ago. It was Makoto. It had to be Makoto. While I was unconscious, only 2 people had touched my phone, and only those 2 were capable of pulling this off. With trembling fingers, I dialed Sophia's number. But all I heard was the beeping tone of a call not being answered. Nothing else. I flagged down a cab, and during the ride I called again and again and again. But by the time I arrived at the Kim Group building, she still hadn't picked up. I jumped out of the taxi and rushed inside. I need to see Sophia, I said urgently at the reception. The security guard blocked me. Mr. Wong, Ms. Kim has instructed us not to let you in. My pupils shrank. So they were prepared for this. She knew I'd come, knew I'd confront her. I said firmly, I need to see her. I have something important to say. But then a cold voice called out from behind me. No need to stop him. George, what do you want? I spun around. There stood Sophia, her face completely indifferent, eyes colder than I'd ever seen. I demanded, you gave my messages with Willow to Makoto, didn't you? She answered without hesitation. Yes. Makoto saw them and discussed it with me. I was the one who decided to increase the offer. George, the Ito Group needed this opportunity. I let out a bitter laugh. What about me then? I didn't need it. Do you even remember how Wong Corp went bankrupt? It was the Ito Group that stole our data, which caused the investors to lower their offers. They gave others the chance to crush us. Sophia responded coldly, it's just a business deal, George. Why are you so obsessed? I pressed. Makoto could have competed fairly. Why would you resort to dirty tactics to help him? Her face darkened. Enough. Even if I was wrong this time, would this have happened if you hadn't been messaging that Willow woman? Don't act like a victim. I've told you countless times Wong Corp's collapse had nothing to do with Makoto. Stop clinging to ancient history. And I haven't even come after you for your thing with Willow. You'd better watch yourself. With that, she turned and walked away. I returned to the villa, packed my things, and went to the study. The divorce papers were still on the desk untouched. No signature. I didn't care anymore whether she hadn't seen them or simply refused to sign. I had already signed several copies. Over the next few days, they would be delivered to her office, to the Kim family estate, to wherever she couldn't avoid them. 3 days later, I boarded a plane overseas with my mother, escorted by medical staff. Chapter 9. Thanks to advanced treatment methods and newly approved medication, my mother's condition steadily improved. The weight on my chest finally began to lift. One evening at dinner, Willow noticed me listlessly picking at my food. She gently said, you need to eat something. You've barely touched your meals the past few days. You're getting thinner. If Auntie wakes up and sees you like this, she's gonna blame me for not taking good care of you. I chuckled softly. You've already done more than enough. You're our guardian angel, how could she possibly blame you? Just then a server pushed a cart into the room. A birthday cake. I froze in surprise. Willow smiled. Come on, close your eyes, make a wish, blow out the candles. My throat tightened. When I opened my eyes again, they were misty. Thank you, really thank you. I couldn't even remember the last time I celebrated my birthday. Ever since Mom got sick, no one had remembered. No one had tried. She said, George, cheer up. Things are going to get better from here. I nodded, smiling through the blur. Meanwhile, at the Kim family villa, Sophia and Maria had just stepped inside. The house felt unusually quiet and empty. Something felt off. Sophia called for the housekeeper, frowning. "Where's George?" The housekeeper replied, "Honestly, Mr. Wong hasn't been home these past few days." Sophia thought to herself, maybe that's for the best. At least he won't be here pestering me for answers. She nodded, handed the housekeeper a gift box, and said, "Give this to him when he returns." Inside was a watch. A gesture of compensation, a peace offering of sorts. But after a moment's hesitation, she realized, knowing George, if someone else hands it over, he'll just think I don't care. She shook her head. "Never mind. I'll give it to him myself." Taking the box back, she asked the housekeeper to watch Maria, then went into the study. There was a new sheet of paper on the desk, plain and unfamiliar. Sophia assumed George had snuck in to leave her a note. She remembered how after arguments he used to write her letters. Each one different, rambling, full of emotion, but always ending the same way: "Can we stop fighting now?" Apparently some habits never die. Her heart softened. She stepped closer, picked up the paper, and froze as her pupils shrank. Her hand crushed the letter in its grip, creasing it with deep, angry folds. Chapter 10. Sophia frowned. "When did he leave?" The housekeeper hesitated. "Well, it's been about a week, I think." "A week?" Sophia exploded. "He hasn't been home for that long, and you didn't tell me. Where did he go?" The housekeeper answered defensively, "Ma'am, during the days you weren't home, Mr. Wong wasn't around much either. Maybe he went to the hospital." "Hospital?" Sophia narrowed her eyes. What was he doing at the hospital? She tried to sound stern, but anxiety had already begun to bubble beneath the surface. Was it from hitting his head that day, or maybe from getting soaked in the rain? She kept redialing George's number again and again. But all she ever heard was that cold, robotic voice, "Sorry, the number you dialed is no longer in service." She then called the hospital, only to be told that George had already been discharged. Damn it, Sophia gritted her teeth. How dare he just disappear like this? Frustrated, she called her assistant, ordering them to investigate George's whereabouts immediately. Just then, the housekeeper rushed in, flustered. "Ma'am, something's wrong. Mr. Wong's clothes, they're all gone." Sophia bolted toward the bedroom. The room was even emptier than the last time she'd visited. She yanked open the closet, the nightstand drawers aside from her own belongings, everything else was gone. She dashed to the bathroom. Nothing of George's remained, not a single item. A wave of dread swept over her. It felt like something had slipped entirely out of her control. Her legs went weak. She stumbled, collapsing onto the bed. At that moment, her assistant burst in, breathless. "Miss, the last trace of Mr. Wong's activity was at the international airport." The airport? What was he doing there? Her mind went blank. All her confusion slowly twisted into fury. She barked, "What the hell were you all doing? He left and none of you noticed anything." Everyone dropped their heads, speechless. She turned sharply to the housekeeper. "You said he'd been going to the hospital." Then to the assistant, "Check all outbound flight records, especially those involving medical escorts." The assistant ran off without another word. Sophia stood there, brows furrowed, head throbbing with stress. Right then, Maria's voice pierced the tense air. "I don't want this bear, I want the bunny." Sophia turned to see Maria sitting on the playmat, furiously hitting a teddy bear that was missing one ear. Toys were scattered all around her. "What's going on?" she asked. The housekeeper explained, "Miss Maria is looking for the bunny Mr. Wong gave her." Sophia stared at the toy in her hand, and suddenly a long-buried memory surfaced. Back when Maria hadn't yet been born, George had sat in the garden sunlight, wrapping him in a soft golden glow. He'd been smiling, gently, carefully stitching the stuffed bunny, as if it were some priceless treasure. She had leaned against him, teasing, "You stitched it all crooked." He had clapped her away in mock annoyance. That happiness, once warm and vivid, now left only a bitter taste in her mouth. Her chest tightened. Thinking of George, now completely off the grid, she yanked the bear from Maria's hands. "Stop making a fuss." "Bad mommy," Maria screamed, bursting into tears. Just then, the assistant burst back in, voice panicked. "Miss, Mr. Wong's flight, he went to Country D." Chapter 11. Country D. Why would he go to Country D? If she remembered correctly, George had never even mentioned that place before. Could it be for that woman, for Willow? He really abandoned his wife and daughter for her. Gritting her teeth, Sophia barked, "Freeze all the cards under my name." She refused to believe that George wouldn't come back after this. Noticing her worsening expression, the assistant cautiously added, "Ma'am. Madam Wang, Mr. Wang's mother, was also on that flight. It seems George went to accompany her for treatment." Sophia froze. In her memory, George hadn't brought up his mother in a long time. All she remembered was that the woman had been bedridden. The assistant went on, "And Mr. Wang's accounts. They're all at zero. Almost all the money was transferred to the hospital." Hearing that, all of Sophia's anger evaporated in an instant. How could she have forgotten Madame Wang was seriously ill and urgently needed money? How could she have forgotten how George had begged her for help? He had endured so much quietly all this time while she turned a blind eye. The first time he asked for a loan, he had been so humble, so desperate, practically begging her. And what had she done? She ignored his pain, ignored his pleas, watched in cold silence as he slowly gave up on her. Realizing this, Sophia turned abruptly and stormed out. "Where are you going, ma'am?" her assistant called out, hurrying after her, flustered. "To Country D," Sophia snapped. "Book me the next available flight." She was going to bring George back. She would apologize. She would make things right. She rushed out the door and accidentally slammed right into Makoto, nearly knocking him over. Sophia, you hurt me," he cried, raising his voice dramatically. But Sophia didn't even glance at him. Her mind was consumed entirely by George. Seeing her angry, storming off, Makoto scrambled after her. "Sophia, where are you going, Sophia?" She didn't slow down and he couldn't keep up. Frustrated, he grabbed the housekeeper's arm. "Where is she going?" The housekeeper answered, "Ma'am's going to find Mr. Wang. He's gone missing." Missing, Makoto thought. Wouldn't it be better if George just died out there somewhere? Clenching his jaw, he shoved the housekeeper aside, called for his car, and rushed after Sophia. On the way, he kept calling her again and again. Took a dozen calls before she finally answered. Her voice was sharp and filled with impatience. "What do you want?" "Sophia, maybe George just went away to cool off," Makoto said quickly. "You don't need to worry so much. Maria will be scared without you, and your mom too. We're all worried about you." Sophia's voice turned ice cold. "Shut up. I've told you before, I only treated you kindly out of respect for my mother. Don't overstep your place." She paused, then added sternly, "Don't even think about replacing George." Makoto was speechless. "How can you say that to me, Sophia? I'm only worried about you." Sophia cut him off. "Enough. I'm bringing Maria with me." Then came the final blow, "And you'd better not say a word of this to my mother." Her assistant moved quickly. Following Sophia's orders, she picked up Maria. That night, Sophia and her daughter boarded a flight to Country D. Chapter 12. The plane flew smoothly through the night sky. Outside the window, nothing but dense clouds and endless darkness. Sophia's heart was in turmoil. The long night was silent, leaving her alone to swallow waves of regret. Her mind wandered from the sweetness of their newlywed days to the bitterness of their most recent argument. And finally she remembered who George used to be. At 18, George had shouldered the entire Wang Corporation after his father's death all by himself. He moved with ease through high society, radiating confidence and charisma. It was then that Sophia had fallen for him at first sight. At 20, he shone even brighter. He was the prized protege of a renowned researcher, speaking eloquently at conferences. Sophia became even more certain that he was the one she wanted to marry. At 22, he was gentle and attentive, their newlywed days filled with love and laughter. Sophia had secretly vowed to love him for life. At 23, he became a father. The three of them were a happy little family. Those were the happiest days of Sophia's life. But everything changed when he turned 26. That was when Makoto returned to the country. Sophia's mother had always disliked George and had long hoped to pair Sophia with Makoto instead. Then came the collapse of Wang Corporation. George had insisted that the Ito Group had used underhanded tactics, and he questioned why Sophia refused to investigate further. Soon after, Madame Wang fell critically ill. While George was overwhelmed, Sophia's mother took the child away, banning George from seeing his daughter. From that day on, the father and daughter became strangers. And Sophia, she had chosen indifference time and time again. She stood against him instead of beside him. She watched him suffer alone, watched him panic, watched him slowly lose all hope. She had even been secretly pleased thinking that George had finally learned to dedicate himself entirely to their home, to embrace the role of a stay-at-home husband. All along she believed she was the one in control of their marriage, that George depended on her to live. Only now did she realize just how terribly wrong she'd been. How could she have forgotten that George was once talented and full of light, and that it was for her that he dimmed that brilliance, restraining himself to play the role of the perfect husband. Forgotten that as his wife she should have stood by him. Forgotten that what she loved from the beginning was the man who was bright, confident, and full of fire. She had drained all the love from him and then blamed him for not loving her anymore. Sophia pulled out the divorce agreement from her coat pocket. She read it over and over. No claim on property. No fight for custody. All he wanted was a clean break. Tears dropped onto the page, smudging the ink. She covered her face, trembling as the tears spilled silently down her cheeks. George's determination was written in every word. And now she was scared, terrified. Only when he was truly gone did she realize how much she loved him, how deep her regret ran, and how it was already too late. Beside her, Maria slept peacefully, clutching her little teddy bear, still unaware that her father had already left them. Perhaps in her dreams she was still upset, still blaming Sophia for yelling at her and Uncle Ito when her father went missing. Sophia watched her daughter quietly, emotions tangled and heavy. Maria hadn't always been like this. She used to be sweet, polite, gentle. Not this angry, spoiled little tyrant. Sophia knew something was wrong, but she'd let it happen anyway. She had stood by watching Maria speak to her father with cruelty and had said nothing. She let it slide again and again. Sophia let out a long sigh and gently stroked Maria's head. Softly she murmured, "Maria, let's apologize to Daddy together, even if he never forgives us." Chapter 13. By the time the plane landed, the sky had already brightened. Sophia hadn't slept all night. Her eyes were bloodshot and exhausted. Her assistant had contacted the local branch to help search for clues, but came back empty-handed. Maria rested in Sophia's arms and asked curiously, "Where's Daddy, Mommy? You can't find him either." Sophia's eyes were filled with sorrow. She didn't answer. Instead, she took out her phone and hesitated before dialing a familiar number from memory. It rang only once before a voice answered. "Hello, who is this?" "It's me, Sophia. Do you know where George is?" she asked softly. Before she could finish her sentence, the call abruptly ended. She tried again, then again, until her screen told her, "You have been blocked." Maria, not understanding what her mother was doing, turned her gaze to a family nearby. A father, mother, and their child. The child laughed joyfully as the father played with him while the mother held him gently. They looked so happy, like a real family. Maria didn't know why, but she felt a strange twinge of envy. Her mother was holding her too, but her daddy wasn't there. Uncle Ito could play with her, sure, but he never laughed like that, never truly smiled. Children are sensitive. Maria had always felt that Uncle Ito didn't really like her. But for some reason he always gave her whatever she wanted. She felt confused. At the auction that day, Uncle Ito told her, "If you tell your daddy that you hate him, he'll love you more." But why did Daddy look so hurt that day? Why did he cry? Why was he gone now? Suddenly Maria missed her dad. Meanwhile, I removed my gloves and looked up to see Willow's face clouded with displeasure. "What's wrong, Willow? Who was that on the phone just now?" I asked casually. She replied, "Spam call. I blocked it." Willow smiled naturally. "Professor was looking for us. Come on, let's go." I didn't suspect a thing. I nodded and followed her. In the office, David listened as we reported our recent experiment progress, occasionally chiming in with insights. I nodded eagerly, trying to memorize every word he said. Every comment felt like gold. Toward the end, David's voice softened. He returned to his usual warm demeanor and said, "It was just one business deal. Don't let it get to you. Especially you, George. Don't blame yourself." I lowered my gaze, voice subdued. "It was my mistake. I'm sorry, Professor." David shook his head. "It's all right. Learn from it, that's all that matters. How's your mother doing?" "She's doing much better than before," I said, light entering my voice. "The doctors say if recovery continues at this pace, she might even wake up in a few days." I bowed deeply to both of them. "It's all thanks to you and Willow that I could bring her here for treatment." Willow quickly stepped forward to help me up. Don't say that, Junior. You're giving us too much credit. David also nodded. It's not our credit. It's yours. George, if you hadn't made the decision to turn your life around, no one, not even us, could have helped you. My eyes reddened. Then David looked at me sternly and said, regret is a good thing. But remember what I told you years ago. Don't waste your talent. George, when you make choices in the future, I want you to think them through. Don't let yourself be swayed just because someone moves your heart. He had said those same words 7 years ago. And now 7 years later, he couldn't help but say them again. George was once his brightest student, and he couldn't bear to watch a gem be dulled by the world again. I nodded repeatedly. I understand, Professor. David gave a few final instructions about the upcoming press conference. Then, after one long glance at Willow, he dismissed us from the room. Chapter 14. Just a few days remained before the press conference, and I'd been so anxious over the data that I hadn't slept in days. Just as I was about to bury myself in the lab again, Willow stopped me. Junior, she said, I found a really good Chinese restaurant. Let's go together, okay? Before I could refuse, she added, it's close to the hospital. After we eat, we can go visit Auntie together. That made me pause. I nodded in agreement. The restaurant played soft, flowing music. Willow picked up a piece of spare rib and placed it on my plate. You need to eat well. You've been burning the candle at both ends. Look at those dark circles. Thanks, Willow. I smiled, though my brow still carried traces of worry. It had been a long time since I'd personally worked on an experiment. Getting this opportunity was something I had dreamed of, and with the press conference approaching, even though I wasn't the one presenting, I'd still need to handle networking afterward. That would require solid expertise. The pressure had kept me up late every night working in secret. Was it really that obvious? It's okay, Willow said, gently reading my thoughts. Relax. She began telling me a few bad jokes, trying to lighten the mood. I chuckled. You're still not great at jokes, huh? Willow raised her eyebrows with mock pride. Come on, I'm hilarious. I laughed and nodded. Sure you are. After dinner, we headed to the hospital. My mother was still lying quietly in bed, but her face looked so much better. She no longer looked frail and hollow like before. I stood there behind the observation glass, watching her for the whole afternoon. When the sun finally dipped below the horizon and visiting hours came to an end, I reluctantly left with Willow. The city streets in the evening were buzzing with life. People passed by, couples on dates, families out for a stroll. Watching them, a wave of melancholy welled up in me. These past few years, I said, I honestly thought this was it for me. Wong Corp went under. My mother got sick. My daughter drifted away. My marriage crumbled. It felt like no matter what role I played, son, father, husband, I just failed. Once the words started, I couldn't stop. Everything I'd bottled up for so long finally found its way out. I spoke slowly, calmly, describing everything that had happened after I got married. When I reached the end, I took a breath and smiled at Willow. Do you think I'm pathetic? Willow shook her head, her voice steady but firm. No. I blinked, caught off guard. She continued, you're amazing. You carried Wong Corp on your own. You took care of your mother all these years alone. You kept moving forward even when everyone was against you. So no, I don't think you're pathetic. In my eyes, you'll always be the confident, resilient George. You're not just someone's father or someone's husband. You're you. Her eyes were deep, unwavering. Don't ever compromise yourself for anyone. My chest tightened with emotion, but I let out a soft laugh. You're starting to sound like our professor. Willow patted my shoulder. Everything's going to be okay. You have a bright future ahead of you. And in her heart, she thought, don't worry, little brother. No one can stand in your way, not your wife, not your daughter, not even me. You don't have to be afraid anymore, George. If anyone or anything stands in your way, I'll tear it down for you. Without hesitation. Chapter 15. The day of the press conference arrived right on schedule. Everything went as planned, smooth and seamless, but with one unexpected twist. At the end of the presentation, David suddenly called me up to the stage. This, he announced to the audience, is my prize student and the one who processed the follow-up data. He'll be giving you a deeper insight into the results. A ripple of surprise ran through the crowd. Everyone knew this wasn't just a moment in the spotlight, it was a golden ticket to future collaborations. An endorsement from David himself. Some people looked curious, wondering who I was. Others were stunned by the level of trust David placed in me. A few looked on with suspicion, as if I were just another opportunist riding academic coattails. For a brief second, nerves hit me. But then I caught Willow's calm gaze, so full of trust and encouragement. I steadied myself, took a deep breath, and stepped onto the stage. With fluent English, I began presenting. Confident, composed, just like the man I used to be. In the audience, Sophia sat silently watching me shine. The more she watched, the heavier the ache in her chest grew. Willow, sensing a pair of burning eyes, turned her head and spotted Sophia sitting in a corner of the hall. She let out a cold laugh, then turned back around, already planning how to keep the two of us apart. Unaware of what was happening below the stage, I finished my presentation smoothly and stepped down to the sound of warm applause. During the coffee break, I followed David, helping him deflect some awkward questions from certain guests. Finally, I accompanied him back to the lounge for a short rest. You did great, David said, clapping my shoulder. It won't be long before you're leading your own projects. I smiled humbly. Thank you, Professor. Then, noticing something, I asked, by the way, have you seen Willow? David waved his hand. No need to worry about her, she's busy. And indeed, Willow was very busy clashing with Sophia just outside the main hall. As soon as I'd walked off with David, Willow had cut through the crowd and stood directly in Sophia's path. You must be Sophia, she said flatly. We need to talk. Sophia frowned. And who the hell are you? She could see George in the distance walking away, and this woman kept getting in her way. It made her furious. Willow's eyes held a mocking glint. I'm Willow, now you're worried, she thought. Where was all that concern when you were treating him like garbage? Hearing the name Sophia snapped, rage bubbling over. You're that woman, she shouted, raising her hand to slap her. Willow caught her wrist midair. I'm warning you, assault is a crime. If you want to know how George is doing, you'd better calm down. Noticing security approaching from the corner, Sophia pulled her hand back and hissed, fine, what do you want? I need to see him. Willow scoffed. He doesn't want to see you. Stop wasting your energy, and honestly, what right do you even have? I'm his wife, Sophia said through gritted teeth. I love him. You love him? Willow let out a bitter laugh, as if she just heard the world's cruelest joke. Where were you when his mother was sick, when he was falsely accused and humiliated by your precious ex, when your own daughter shattered his heart right in front of you? Love, all you gave were empty promises. How pathetic. Willow's smile faded, her voice laced with exhaustion and disdain. Tell me, didn't you receive the divorce papers? I didn't agree to it, Sophia shot back. As long as I haven't signed, he's still my husband. He's still Maria's father. Willow laughed cold and sharp. You see, you don't respect him at all. Then her expression turned icy. What makes you think you have the right to treat a person like they're your possession? You're so arrogant, it's delusional, Sophia snapped. And what gives you the right to judge me, you homewrecker? Willow's lips curled into a razor-sharp smile. Save that line for your own conscience. Do you really not understand why George wants a divorce? Start looking inward. George has already given you more chances than you deserve. You, Sophia tried to speak, but Willow cut her off. If you don't want him to hate you forever, stay away from him. Don't think stalking him will change his mind. And with that, Willow turned and walked away, not even glancing back at the woman she just demolished. Chapter 16. Sophia wanted to speak up in defense, but found herself at a loss for words. She wanted to run after him, but realized she had no reason to. Just like Willow said, George didn't belong to anyone. He had a mind of his own, not easily swayed by outsiders. All his past patience and compromises were simply because George loved her, because he loved her. He was willing to make sacrifices, but that didn't mean he would keep sacrificing himself forever, especially when she was the one who broke their vows first. It was as if all the strength had been drained from Sophia's body. She left the venue in a daze. People bustled along the road, each with their own destination, but where was hers? Sophia asked herself, yet no answer came on the other side. Willow didn't feel as relieved as she thought she would. She knew George's personality all too well. While her words had been aimed at Sophia, they also cut into herself. She thought, Willow, who are you to expect George to love you? What are you even hoping for? As George approached, Willow put a smile back on her face. She thought, if this love cannot be known to him, then I'll just keep it hidden deep in my heart, so he never has to feel burdened. Willow asked, Junior, what's wrong? I asked with concern. Where did you go just now? You look pale. Willow smiled nonchalantly and said, someone gave me a hard time, but it's fine. I gave it right back to them. She brushed it off, and I didn't press further, and so the day's conference came to an end. On the way back, our junior suggested we go out for a celebratory dinner. David had no objections and offered to cover the expenses, so we all went together amid the cheers of our fellow disciples. We walked into a bar as a group. After a few rounds of drinks, nearly everyone was tipsy. Another sober junior sister and I exchanged helpless glances as we helped round up the drunk ones and called rides for them. Willow barely managed to stay conscious. Just as she was getting into a taxi, she suddenly grabbed my hand and said, don't go. I was startled, but didn't pull away. I said, Senior, you're drunk. I'll have someone take you home. Willow held on tightly and refused to let go. Seeing how intoxicated she was, the junior sister, who came with us, tried to gently pry Willow's fingers off while saying, that's right, Senior, I'll take you home. It's late and Senior brother needs to go Home to the moment she heard a certain word, Willow's fingers suddenly loosened. The junior sister breathed a sigh of relief, waved goodbye to me, and helped Willow into the car, and left. I took a taxi back to my apartment alone, not giving too much thought to Willow's sudden emotional outburst. The next day, I received great news from the hospital. My mom had finally regained consciousness. As soon as I heard the news, I rushed to the hospital. Seeing my mother smile at me through the glass, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. At some point, Willow also arrived. She took out a tissue for me and gently patted my shoulder. In comfort, days passed, and after 3 or 5 of them, the doctor announced my mother could be moved out of the ICU. The day she was transferred to a regular ward happened to be beautifully sunny. Willow told me to sit and rest. She busied herself packing everything up and then quietly stepped out to give us some space. I held my mother's hand and chatted with her for a long time. Eventually she looked at me and suddenly asked, "George, are you hiding something from me?" My smile froze for a moment. Finally I nodded and said, "I divorced Sophia." Chapter 17. I looked nervously at my mother, afraid that the news would cause her to relapse. She seemed a bit surprised, but didn't react strongly. She said, "That's good." I asked, puzzled. "Mom," she replied, "no matter what you choose, Mom supports you." She raised her hand and gently patted my shoulder. My son has suffered so much. At that moment I could no longer hold back my emotions. Tears slid down from the corners of my eyes. My mom reached out and wiped them away for me. Then she smiled and said, "Is that your senior sister?" I nodded and said, "Yes, Senior Willow has helped me a lot, both financially and in many other ways. The hospital you're in was arranged thanks to her and our professor." My mom nodded and said, "Then you must thank her properly." Then she suddenly added, "Miss Lou is so outstanding. She must have a boyfriend, right? You should invite them for dinner sometime." I was stunned and said, "I don't think she does." My mom seemed lost in thought. Then she asked, "So, are you planning to continue with scientific research in the future?" I nodded and said, "I still prefer it. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm just not cut out for business." She shook her head and said, "Like I said, I support every decision you make." Back at the lab, I was visibly more relaxed. To make time to visit my mother, I became more efficient than ever, so much so that it left others amazed. "My junior," exclaimed the legendary senior brother, "really is a beast." He shook his head with admiration, sparking a wave of agreement. Our advisor called me over, looking a bit embarrassed as he pointed to a child beside him. Her mom dropped her off without saying a word. "I've got a meeting to discuss a partnership and no time to watch her. Can I trouble you to look after her for just a little while?" There was no reason for me to refuse, so I immediately said, "Of course, don't worry." He added, "Sorry for the trouble." David hurriedly gathered his things and left, not forgetting to tell his granddaughter before he walked out, "Be good and listen to your uncle." The little girl nodded sweetly and said, "I will, Grandpa." I wasn't sure where to take her. The lab was too dangerous with all the chemical reagents, and the office was too boring. The little girl politely introduced herself. "My name is Ewan, and Uncle, can you take me to the park nearby?" So I took her to the park. Everything was new and exciting to her at first, and then tried to act composed, but in no time she was running after butterflies, full of childlike joy. I followed closely behind her. Suddenly someone dashed out and grabbed an and trying to run off with her. I chased after them immediately, trying to fight them off, but I was too slow and was just about to be taken away right before my eyes. Then out of nowhere someone rushed in and tackled the kidnapper to the ground. Panicking, the trafficker ran away and clung to my leg, crying hard. I picked her up and gently patted her back to soothe her, as if calming my own child. She quickly regained her composure, and I finally had the chance to look at the person who had saved her. The familiar face made my heart freeze. Sophia stood in front of me, holding Maria's hand, her expression filled with sorrow. She bit her lip and said, "George, come home with me." I frowned and was about to leave when Maria immediately began to cry and scream through her tears. She sobbed, "Daddy, don't go, Daddy, don't leave." She ran over and held onto my leg, refusing to let me go. Sophia said, "George, both the child and I miss you. Can't we go home together?" Mother and daughter played out their performance perfectly, as if I were the heartless man who had abandoned them. I just felt disgusted to use this kind of emotional manipulation to lure me back. "How shameless," I said coldly. "That won't be necessary. I already gave you the divorce papers." Chapter 18. "George, do you really have to be this cruel?" Sophia asked in a pitiful tone. I looked at her with an indifferent expression and replied, "That's a question I should be asking you, Sophia. There's nothing between us now. Stop interfering in my life. If you're not satisfied with the divorce agreement, we can go to court, but if it came to that, even the last shred of dignity between us would be gone." Sophia read between the lines, her fists clenched tightly as she asked, "So you don't even want the child?" I glanced at Maria, who was still holding on to me. My voice was calm. "No, I don't." Maria was stunned. She had never imagined her father would say he didn't want her. Frozen in disbelief, she didn't react as I quickly pulled away from her and turned to leave. Moments later, Maria snapped out of it and began crying as she tried to chase after me, but in the blink of an eye I got into an unfamiliar car and was gone. Maria cried harder and harder. Sophia stood silent for a moment before she picked up Maria and flagged down a taxi to follow me. Meanwhile, Willow glanced in the rearview mirror at the taxi chasing after them and let out a cold laugh as she turned the steering wheel sharply. She thought, "Sophia really is like a lingering ghost. I guess that warning a few days ago did absolutely nothing." You and noticed the weird atmosphere inside the car and asked, "Why aren't you talking? That auntie just saved me." And I haven't thanked her yet. We were both stunned and didn't know what to say back at the lab. David had already returned after hearing everything. He said going back to China is fine, but only after she agrees to finalize the divorce legally. Willow said firmly, "If she refuses, we'll just drag it out until the marriage is officially annulled. George, don't go out much these next few days. Don't let her find you." David disagreed. He believed this was something I had to face eventually. I was still hesitant. I wanted the divorce, but I didn't want to go back because I knew if I did, Sophia would never let me go again. Suddenly a thought struck me. I shot up and ran out. What if she finds my mom? If Sophia could find me, then it wouldn't be hard for her to trace that line back to my mother. My face turned pale with panic. Willow quickly followed me, but we were too late. In the hospital room, Sophia was already sitting beside the bed with Maria. My mother looked calm, as though nothing had upset her. Seeing me arrive, her expression relaxed. "George, you're here." My face was dark with anger. I turned to Sophia and asked, "What are you doing here?" Sophia looked innocent as she replied, "I came to visit my mother-in-law." I immediately snapped, "Who are you calling your mother-in-law? There's nothing between us anymore." Sophia turned to my mother, but found no reaction on her face, as if she had known the truth all along. A sense of dread rose in Sophia's chest. I could read her thoughts easily. This was just another trick using my mother to manipulate me, and I found her more disgusting than ever. I raised my hand and pointed toward the door. "You can leave now." Sophia took a deep breath, trying to salvage something. She said, "George, Maria misses her grandma so much. Can't you just let them stay a little longer?" I was about to refuse when my mother's phone suddenly rang. She answered the unfamiliar number, and a deep male voice came through the speaker. "George, have you no shame? You cheated on Sophia with other women, and even after the divorce you still won't leave her alone. Mrs. Wong, is this how you raised your son?" I took the phone from my mother, my tone instantly cold and sharp. "Makoto, if you have a problem, take it out on me. Don't you dare insult my mother. Let me tell you something. If anything happens to her, you'll be the first person I come for. Do you really think the Ito Corporation can survive an investigation? You know exactly what you did back then." Makoto replied with a mocking laugh, "How ridiculous. So what if I did it? You're just a loser. What gives you the right to threaten me like that?" Chapter 19. I glanced at Sophia and said with a strange tone, "So that's a confession?" Makoto replied smugly, "Yeah, I admit it. So what do you have proof?" "Words mean nothing without evidence. No one's going to believe you, and let me warn you, if you keep pestering Sophia, I won't mind sending your mom back to the hospital." If this had happened in the past, his words would have thrown me into panic. For a long time back then, I couldn't let go of my sick mother, and I still held on to foolish hopes about Sophia, but now I just let out a cold "oh" and was about to hang up the phone. Sophia, however, snatched it from my hand first and shouted, "Makoto, what the hell is wrong with you?" But her outburst didn't make it through. He had already hung up. Sophia's face turned dark. She blocked Makoto's number and handed the phone back to me. I took it calmly and looked at her. "You should go." Her siding with me still felt a little foreign. After all, in the mess of our marriage over the years, I had always been the one blamed for everything. She said, "You're angry." I replied, "I'm just mad that he insulted my mother. As for the rest, there's no need for you to get so worked up." My tone was indifferent. "It's not that big of a deal." Sophia became emotional. "Then what is a big deal to you?" I said, "Compared to stolen research, compared to all the years of isolation and helplessness, a single phone call, it's nothing." Sophia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Willow, standing just beside me, closer than typical social distance, watched Sophia warily the whole time, as if she was ready to confront her the moment she did anything remotely harmful. I had grown used to Willow's closeness. I simply stared at Sophia, eyes cold, and the look in them chilled her. Her eyes shimmered with sorrow, but in the end she left with Maria without another word. After they were gone, my mother gently patted my trembling hands. She knew how much courage it took to sever the past face to face. I smiled reassuringly and said, "It's okay now. I'm sorry, Mom, for saying all this in front of you." She shook her head. Willow, on the other hand, was clearly concerned. She asked, "That thing you mentioned, do you need my help?" I sighed and said, "I only have some circumstantial evidence. I haven't been able to get the key proof." My expression darkened. That was exactly why I had never been able to bring Makoto to justice. Back then I was overwhelmed on all sides, and every attempt to investigate was met with obstacles. Now, so many years later, any crucial information had probably long been destroyed. As we struggled with our frustration, I suddenly received a message from Sophia. She wrote, "George, something came up at the company. I need to head back first. I will look into that matter. Please wait for me. I really know I was wrong." Willow, standing beside me, read the messages clearly and sneered, "See, the moment something comes up, she leaves you behind." Even her apology lacked sincerity, but I felt slightly relieved. I didn't want to see them anymore. On the plane ride back, Maria kept clinging to Sophia, asking what would happen to her dad. It was the first time since she turned 3 that she missed him this much. It was like going back to that year when her grandmother forcibly took her away. No one paid attention to her crying. They just kept telling her, "Daddy doesn't want you, Daddy doesn't love you." But today she realized Daddy never stopped loving her. It was she who kept hurting him. Now Daddy was too heartbroken. So this time he really left. Thinking that, Maria began to cry again. She sobbed, "Mommy, does Daddy really not want me anymore?" "Really?" Sophia rubbed her temples, trying to comfort her. but didn't know where to begin. By the time the plane landed, Maria had cried herself to sleep. Just as Sophia stepped off the plane, she saw Makoto waiting at the arrival gate. Chapter 20. Makoto approached with a wide smile, trying to grab Sophia's hand, but she coldly shook him off. Get lost. Makoto looked disappointed. Sophia, are you upset? Did George argue with you again? Sophia shot him a glare and said, stay away from me. Makoto, I've told you this countless times. There's nothing between us. Leave now. I don't want to see you. Makoto tried to persist, but was quickly escorted away by 2 security guards. Sophia's secretary rushed over to report the company's current situation. Sophia handed Maria off to the housekeeper. She didn't want to send Maria to her mother's place, but she also couldn't leave her alone at home. She instructed, don't let Makoto go near the old estate. He's not allowed anywhere near Miss Maria. Sophia spent 2 full days at the company handling the mess. Exhausted, she rubbed her temples and kept her most trusted secretary behind to give her some private instructions. The secretary's eyes widened slightly. Miss Kim, it's been 3 or 4 years already. Sophia responded, no matter how long it's been, I want the truth. The secretary sighed but accepted the task and left. On the way back to the family estate, Sophia scrolled through her phone anxiously. There was no reply from George. Panic gripped her. She thought of the young woman standing by his side, of the natural chemistry between the two, and of how dazzling George looked up on that stage. This time her intuition seemed to be right. George really had no intention of coming back to her. He had found a new direction, maybe even a new partner, or perhaps this was the life he was meant to have all along, working in a field he loved, surrounded by like-minded friends, living peacefully with his mother. That day in the hospital, she had felt like an outsider, an intruder who had barged into someone else's perfect life. Sophia knew all of this, but she still couldn't accept it. She couldn't bear to see another woman by George's side. She couldn't accept that George had left her. She hated the feeling of losing control, but in the end what she hated most was the version of herself who had stood by and let everything fall apart. She had made countless mistakes, so many that it felt impossible to fix them. Outside, the sky was gloomy. Sophia remembered it had been just as overcast the day George left. So this is what it feels like to be abandoned. She let out a bitter laugh. Serves me right. She thought. The family estate came into view. Sophia strode inside and immediately saw Maria sitting on the couch beside her. Makoto was chatting with Sophia's mother. Both of them looked genuinely pleased to see her, but Sophia's face darkened instantly. She pulled Maria to her side and said sharply, Makoto, didn't I tell you to stay away from her? Makoto opened his mouth to explain, but before he could speak, Sophia felt something alarming in her palm. Startled, she looked down and realized Maria's cheeks were burning red, her eyes already losing focus. Without hesitation, she scooped Maria into her arms and rushed out quick to the hospital. After the examination, the doctor's face was serious as he scolded her. She has a fever caused by gastroenteritis. As parents, you need to pay more attention. If you'd come any later, she could have suffered brain damage. And stop feeding her random food. Sophia kept nodding in apology. In the hospital room, Maria was receiving fluids through and for. Sophia sat by the bed, not daring to close her eyes. The nanny approached and said gently, Miss, let me stay with the young miss. You should get some rest. Sophia was about to refuse when her phone rang. It was a call from her mother. Chapter 21. Sophia stepped out of the room to answer the phone. Her mother asked, is Maria okay? Sophia replied she had a fever caused by gastroenteritis. Mom, what did you feed her? And didn't I tell the housekeeper Makoto isn't allowed near Maria? Her mother responded lightly, she didn't eat much. Kids get sick. Sometimes it's normal. Don't worry too much. Hearing that, Sophia felt a strange mix of emotions she couldn't describe. After a pause, her mother added, by the way, I heard you divorced George. Why didn't you tell me such good news earlier? If I'd known, I could have started planning your wedding with Makoto already. Sophia snapped back, who said I was getting a divorce? Her tone was clearly unpleasant. Even if I were divorced, I would never marry Makoto. Mom, stop wasting your time, her mother asked in confusion. The divorce papers were sent to the house already. You still don't plan on divorcing him? That George is really something. Wants a divorce, runs off abroad, and still tries to lure you over there? Sophia asked sharply. Did Makoto tell you? That her expression changed instantly. She had never told anyone the reason she went overseas. Her mother said, so what if he did? I'm telling you, don't you dare give Makoto a hard time. He just told me the truth. If George wants a divorce, let him have it. He was never good enough for you. He clung to the Kim family as a son-in-law and wouldn't leave. Now isn't it great? He left on his own and Makoto can finally take his place. Sophia's face darkened. Mom, please stop ruining what's left of my relationship with George. Relationship? Aren't you two divorced? What relationship is left? Sophia raised her voice. I never said I wanted a divorce, and I've never wanted to marry Makoto. Mom, why do you keep pushing him on me? I don't like him. Don't you realize it's because of Makoto that George wants a divorce? Her mother's voice grew sharp too, snapping back, you're blaming me for ruining your relationship. If you'd been this assertive before, I wouldn't have had the chance to interfere. A fly doesn't land on a seamless egg. If Sophia hadn't shown some interest in Makoto, he wouldn't have had any chance to get close. Sophia choked on her words. Her mother smiled smugly. Face it, Sophia, you never loved George that much. Look, even Maria likes Makoto. You clearly have feelings for him too. Marrying Makoto is your best option now. Mom, why do you hate George so much? He's always treated you with respect, Sophia said, her voice tired. This was something George could never understand, and neither could she. What's so great about Makoto? Her mother fired back. Do I need a reason to dislike someone? Sophia shook her head. She didn't want to keep arguing. No reason then. I don't need one either. I hate Makoto and I'll never marry him. With that, she hung up decisively. Not wanting to hear another word, the next morning Maria finally woke up. She blinked and looked around as if searching for something. Where's Daddy? Mommy, where's Daddy? Sophia checked her temperature. Normal. She finally relaxed a little. Maria persisted. Did Daddy come back? Sophia felt a stab of pain in her chest. Not yet. Are you hungry? Maria shook her head. Sophia asked, what did you eat yesterday? Popsicles. Uncle Ito said if I liked them I could eat more, so I ate 3. Maria's voice was weak from the drip. Sophia said gently, no matter how much you like something, you still need to eat in moderation. She didn't want to scold her daughter at a time like this. She added, didn't your dad tell you that? Before Maria went quiet, Sophia sighed. Why didn't you tell anyone you weren't feeling well? Maria answered with a pout. I told Uncle Ito, but he said it was nothing. Then he went out with Grandma. Mommy, I miss Daddy. Wah, recalling how helpless she'd felt the day before. Maria cried even harder. I want Daddy, I want Daddy. Sophia held her tightly, heart aching, and sent a message to George. It was still the middle of the night in his time zone. Sophia didn't expect any reply at all. Chapter 22. The phone rang not long after George was calling hello. Upon hearing her father's voice, Maria burst into louder sobs. Clutching the phone tightly, she cried, Daddy, I feel awful. Can you come back, please? I want Daddy. Wah. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then he said gently, Maria, sweetheart, don't cry. How about Daddy sings you a lullaby to help you sleep? As a soft song flowed through the phone, Maria gradually drifted off. Sophia took the phone back and said, George, the first one, but George cut her off. She's asleep. I'm hanging up now. His voice had gone cold again in an instant. He didn't mention coming back, didn't give Sophia a chance to speak. He hung up decisively. Sophia stood there blankly and numbly tucked Maria into bed. Meanwhile, I sat on my own bed, unable to sleep. Maria was my flesh and blood. Even though I felt bitter, the love of a father was still real. Her hoarse crying voice tore at my heart. I knew instantly she had to be feeling terrible, but still I hadn't caved. The next day, I told my mother what had happened. I said, I don't know what to do. Maria's my daughter. I can't just ignore her. She replied, then go see her. You're her father. That's your right. It has nothing to do with whether you're with Sophia or not. My mom could now get out of bed for short walks. I helped her down the hallway to get some air. She said, don't overthink things. I smiled in relief. I'm lucky to have you, Mom. The days passed quietly for the next half-month. I was in a good mood. My mother's condition was under control, and she could now move around normally. I planned to bring her home to recover, but just as I left the lab, I unexpectedly ran into Sophia. It had only been 2 weeks, but she looked much more worn down. The dark circles under her eyes were impossible to hide. She held a bouquet of roses in her hands and smiled when she saw me. George, the first came. My tone was cold. How did you find me? What are you here for? She said, Maria really wants to see you, and I was worried about your safety here alone. So I came to check on you. The last time had given Sophia a new idea. George still cared for Maria. She knew it was despicable to use the child to tug at George's heart. But even if he scolded her, she wanted to try. She continued, today is also our wedding anniversary. She offered the flowers, but I didn't take them. I let out a cold laugh. Anniversary, that doesn't mean anything anymore, does it? And do you really think a child can trap me? Sophia, the agreement clearly states that custody belongs to you. What exactly are you still clinging to? She bit her lip and said, but you're still Maria's biological father. She misses you so much. She knows she was wrong, and from now on I promise I'll teach her to be respectful and never upset you again. George, can you come back with us? I said no. She asked, why? George, do you really want Maria to grow up without her father? I replied, I'll always love her, but that has nothing to do with our divorce. I'm her father. I'll wish her well on holidays, send her gifts, be there when it matters. I didn't want to keep arguing. Sophia, doesn't it exhaust you holding on to someone who doesn't love you? No, I love you, George, the first truly love you. Sophia wanted to say it aloud, but found herself unable to speak, because even she couldn't believe those words anymore. She did love him, but so did she hurt him. Lowering her gaze, she said quietly, there's really nothing between Makoto and me. I've already sorted things back home about what happened back then. I'm close to finding the truth. George, can you come back with me? I answered calmly, whether there is or isn't, it doesn't matter. Makoto hurt me. He hurt my mother. I'll never forgive him, but I no longer care what you and he may have had. Sophia, can't we just part on good terms? As for the truth, I'll find it myself. I admit I once loved you, but now it's too late for anything else. After those final words, I turned and walked away without looking back. Chapter 23. Sophia stood frozen in place. She had known from the very beginning that it would come to this. The roses in her hand were vivid and Beautiful now, but in a few days they would wither and dry, just like the love between them, once fiery and passionate, now reduced to nothing but fragments. She didn't go after him. She simply watched as George walked farther and farther away until he vanished from sight. In fact, she had visited the hospital that morning to see Mrs. Wong. Mrs. Wong hadn't turned her away. She greeted Sophia with the same warm smile she had worn the first time Sophia had come to visit as a potential daughter-in-law. Polite and gracious, she waited for Sophia to speak first. The room was climate-controlled, cool, and comfortable, yet Sophia was drenched in sweat. She didn't know where to begin or how to tell Mrs. Wong the truth. Mrs. Wong sighed softly. She had met Sophia years ago. Back then Sophia had been radiant and confident, commanding the business world with ease. When she came to the Wong home 7 years ago, she was mature and capable, and when she spoke of George, it was with heartfelt affection. It was for that reason that Mrs. Wong had agreed to their marriage, but even someone with a happy marriage like Mrs. Wong had forgotten feelings change more easily than anything else. She understood why Sophia had come today to ask for help, to beg her to persuade George. Sophia's eyes were full of guilt, but who could say what the next 7 years would bring? Sophia said, "Mom, please help me talk to George." The first no, I wronged him, but can't you ask him to give me one more chance, just one? I promise I'll treat him well for the rest of my life. Mrs. Wong replied, "Sophia, you said the same thing to me 7 years ago." Her tone was still gentle as she continued, "You said you'd love him for life, take care of him forever, and now, Sophia, are you and Makoto truly innocent?" The calmness in her voice was enough to stir a storm within Sophia's heart. Mrs. Wong went on, "Ask yourself honestly, how many chances have I already given you over and over again?" He hoped you'd take his side. "I can keep giving you chances, but love doesn't work the same way. It fades slowly with every disappointment. You did one kind thing and now want to erase every past mistake. Even if you loved him for the rest of your life, how would you repay the hurt you already caused?" Sophia said quietly. "This time is different." Mrs. Wong gently interrupted, "Don't rush to defend yourself. You think someone else tempted you away, but Sophia, if you truly loved him, you wouldn't let him suffer even the smallest grievance." Sophia's face grew even paler. She said, "I didn't know what else to do, Mom. I really didn't. My mother kept giving him a hard time. I thought if I pretended not to care, she'd stop targeting him. I only saw Makoto as family. There was never anything between us." Mrs. Wong responded calmly, "Those are words you should have said to George, not cried out to me." She added, "You looked down on him. You thought he was just a house husband, that there were things he didn't need to know, that relying on you was enough. But you were wrong, Sophia. That was never what he wanted." Her gaze shifted toward the doorway. Willow had arrived, clearly anxious, afraid Sophia would upset Mrs. Wong. Mrs. Wong offered her a reassuring glance. Then she turned back to Sophia and said, "I won't speak for you. If you want to try again, go find him yourself." She gestured toward the door. "But if George says no, don't cling to him any longer." Chapter 24. Sophia quickly returned to the country. Her secretary had already gathered all the available evidence. "The trail is too cold, Chairwoman," the secretary said. "What we have isn't enough to fully convict the Ito group." Sophia replied calmly, "That's fine, just do as I said." Soon a scandal broke across the city. News of the Ito group engaging in malicious business warfare spread like wildfire. The company's stock price plummeted while the Ito group scrambled for damage control. An anonymous whistleblower leaked the final piece of evidence, with the police stepping in. The truth was fully revealed. The Ito group went bankrupt, torn apart by competing family interests, just like the Wong family had been years ago. Makoto was now terrified. Without the backing of his family, his dream of marrying Sophia was nothing short of absurd. He desperately tried to find another way. 3 days later, a new scandal broke out. Rumors of Sophia having cheated during her marriage spread throughout the city. The evidence, too authentic to dismiss, caused the Kim Group stock to crash. Sophia was overwhelmed trying to contain the damage. Even the retired Kim patriarch had to step in to help clean up the mess. But in the end, the blow to the Kim Group was irreversible. Though Sophia publicly declared the rumors false, a leaked copy of the divorce agreement made the cheating claims even more believable. Staring at the declining state of the family business, Sophia's mother furiously called me. The moment I answered, she barked, "George, just how far are you planning to drag our family down?" I let out a cold laugh. "Me, you brought this on yourselves." I hung up without hesitation. Willow, standing nearby, smiled. "So the truth's finally out?" I nodded. A weight had been lifted from my chest. Willow suggested, "Should we celebrate? I found a really great dessert place." I agreed. David had somehow appeared behind us without us noticing. He snorted, "Celebrating every day, huh? Are your experiments done?" We glanced at each other and said in unison, "Done." David gave us a stern look. "If anything goes wrong at the conference next month, you two little punks are done for." He huffed and walked off, but just before stepping out he turned back and added, "Which dessert shop? Bring me back a slice of cake." That evening we returned to my apartment together, watching us walk in side by side. Mrs. Wong looked thoughtful. "One day when I wasn't home," she asked, "Willow, you like George, don't you?" Willow's face turned bright red, but she nodded firmly. "I like him." Mrs. Wong spoke gently. "But George doesn't know, does he?" Willow replied, "I don't want to burden him. He just got out of a long relationship. I don't want to trouble him. I'll like him quietly until the day he notices. If he accepts or rejects me, I'll respect that." Mrs. Wong asked, And if George rejects you word by word, Willow answered, that's okay, I'll still like him. Whether or not he likes me has nothing to do with how I feel. Her eyes were sincere. As long as he's happy, I'm content. Mrs. Wang was briefly at a loss for words. You're too persistent. Willow smiled brightly. Everyone should have something they're willing to hold on to. Besides, I've liked him since 10 years ago. A month later, the academic conference went smoothly as a fresh face I shined on stage, silencing all doubts. Afterward, Willow handed me a large bouquet of roses. Congratulations, Junior. I smiled and graciously accepted the applause and the flowers. That evening at the celebration, my mother also attended. She pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. Curious, I opened it. Inside was the divorce agreement signed by Sophia. Tucked behind it was a small note that simply read, I'm sorry. The first I'm sorry was written in bold strokes, clearly Sophia's handwriting. The second was shaky, childish. Maria had written it, carefully copying the style. I gently placed the note back in the envelope, my face lit with a peaceful smile. 7 years of marriage. Finally, it was truly over. It was finished. I smiled, but tears kept pouring down my face. My mother hugged me and said, it's okay. Everything will be better from now on. Willow came out to usher us back in. She said cheerfully, Mrs. Wang Jr., come on, you're the star tonight. Chapter 25. The moment Sophia tucked the letters into the envelope, silent tears began to fall from her eyes. The Kim group had greatly weakened. She was swamped with work and had grown noticeably thinner. It had taken her a long time and a lot of hesitation before she finally signed the divorce papers. During that time, perhaps from overhearing too many unpleasant conversations, even Maria had become more mature. When she learned that her parents were getting divorced, she accepted it more quickly than expected. She only asked one question, does Daddy still love me? Will he still come see me? Sophia nodded and said, of course, Mommy and Daddy will always love you, Mommy. I want to apologize to Daddy too. Can you teach me how to write? I'm sorry, my teacher said today, if you do something wrong, you have to say sorry. That's how you earn forgiveness. Sophia froze for a moment, then her eyes welled with tears. She said, okay, how wonderful it would have been if things had always been like this. At the desk, mother and daughter carefully wrote the words stroke by stroke. Maria solemnly folded her note and placed it into the envelope. As the letter was taken away, Maria suddenly grew anxious. Mommy, what if Daddy doesn't forgive us? After a moment of silence, Sophia answered, then we'll keep apologizing until he does. Okay. Maria nodded vigorously. 3 months after the official divorce, George sent Maria a teddy bear. She treasured it, placing it carefully by her pillow. Now on either side of her pillow sat 2 teddy bears. Each night before bed, she would say goodnight to both of them, giving each one a kiss as if her father were right there with her. After several months of court proceedings, Makoto was finally sentenced and sent to prison. Sophia messaged George with the news. He didn't reply, but she knew he must have seen it. That first New Year after the divorce, he still didn't return, but as always he sent a gift and a letter for Maria. The letter held only one line, Happy New Year, Maria. Daddy loves you. The gift was a protective charm shaped like a golden ingot woven with traditional red knots. Maria was overjoyed. She placed it under her pillow and slept especially soundly. That night, from that day on every holiday, Maria would eagerly look forward to receiving a letter from Daddy. The housekeeper, watching all of this, couldn't help but feel heartache. Miss, she asked Sophia, little miss Mrs. Mr. George so much, why don't you take her to see him? Sophia let out a bitter smile. I don't want to pressure him anymore. Besides, this is enough. This is already enough. He still remembered the child. Every blessing he sent was filled with genuine care, and so she allowed herself to imagine that a small part of those blessings might be for her too, that in his heart there was still a place for their shared past. She would hold onto those memories and silently endure the punishment she deserved. Sophia returned to her study and pulled out a photo frame from a hidden corner of the bookshelf. The photo had faded with time, but the image still made her nose sting with emotion. A happy family of 3, Maria, sweet and well-behaved George, smiling warmly, his eyes full of love as he looked at the camera, his lips slightly parted, as if he were saying something. Sophia remembered clearly at that moment. He had been reminding her, look at the camera, Sophia, don't tease Maria. When vows vanish like mist and the beauty of the past becomes a distant echo, those memories had supported George through 7 long years, and now the same fragments of happiness would carry Sophia through the rest of her life.